Hokey cokey, this is predominantly just a Bitcoin update. It will be very short, short and sweet. Short and sweet. So, yeah. Right, so as you know, I've been tracking this potential head and shoulders on Bitcoin. And yeah, I guess with the head and shoulders, I mean, this is just a recap for those who are not familiar. Basically, Tom asked, you know, what's the likely play out of a head and shoulders. Now, I don't like patterns on crypto simply because every monkey is looking at them. Like every man and his dog is just looking for these textbook patterns. So the thing with cryptos is that, you know, 2 out of 3 will work, and everyone goes, ah, cool, this pattern works, and then the third one is the one that will absolutely screw you. And I felt this, you know, I've experienced this firsthand a few times. So, but technically speaking, so looking at Tom's picture here, the distance, the take profit 1 or TP1 is the distance between the neckline and the head. So in this case, let's say that's $1,000 from neckline to head. It should play out, the safe probability is that it should play out $1,000 below the neckline. So in this case, I said, I don't know what I said, like 10,200. So in this particular case, if I move my mug, come on, move me, there we go. That's pretty much what happened. So we had the neckline, if we just draw a little line here, which is that, and it dropped to 10,200. Well, actually hit 10,000, and then it's rebounded up a bit. So the reason why I'm cautious is that, so although I'm still bearish, I'm cautious of this trend line here. So if we zoom in a bit, so we can see that there is a definite trend line which has reacted in the past here, and the market has literally just fallen straight through that or into it. Now there's also a confluence of support. So we have this flat top sort of level here. So let's say that's roughly the sort of this level here. So what's actually happened is that the market has basically gone straight through this. Now earlier this morning, the market was actually sat in this confluence of support, and I was very tempted to go long here, simply because when you have a confluence of support like this, it's basically added pressure or added sort of support to the market, and so it's a stronger floor, so to speak. However, the market has actually just shot straight through that, and is pulled back to this, again, confluence of now resistance, so it's now like a really strong ceiling. And I guess the textbook breakout is where, like I always go on about, where something breaks below a level, it pulls back to kiss off that level, and then buggers off. However, I think it's still too early to tell in this particular case, simply because this line is going to be more of a buffer, because yes, that could definitely be a line, which, I mean, the market has reacted to that before, but likewise, it could also be, you know, something like this, and so there's always a bit of a buffer, like a bit of a range. I guess this one is the one that the market has actually reacted to off most. Sorry, I'm struggling to speak today. So I'm still remaining cautious. I'm still not in. I'm still in the sidelines since I exited Ether. Now the thing is, looking at Ether, I'm actually more bearish on Ether, simply because we're having something like this. So I guess there's 2 lines here. There's that one, and then there's also this one. Long story short, markets always love to fill a gap like this, and so I see a bit more falling. I think simply because Ether exacerbates pretty much anything that Bitcoin does. I guess this is the neckline for maybe some really weird pattern. It's not a head and shoulders, it's not a triple top, don't know what it is. It's nothing, basically. Don't try and force patterns in the market. There isn't always a pattern. Sometimes there is just noise. However, what is forming, whoopsie daisy, I hate TradingView, I prefer my own charting software. There is somewhat of a neckline there, which it is hitting. I still feel that there's more falling due with Ether. Also, not crypto related, it's Tesla. I hear all sorts of things. I see everyone that's super bullish, super bearish. Just looking at the chart, all I'm looking at is this line here. There's oodles of space for this to fall into. Oodles. So I see this coming back down to sort of this $325 level for sure. But then again, when you look at the weekly chart, and you should never ignore the weekly chart, there's also something like this going on, which means there's oodles of space down here. I think there's a very high probability that this line will be attacked, but please, like, I cannot stress this enough. I've been saying this for the last, I don't know, 4 months now. It's irrelevant of what's going on in Tesla. It's irrelevant of what's going on in Bitcoin. Like, everything is all down to the mothership. And when I say the mothership, I mean the S&P 500 and the daddy ship, which is the Dow Jones. Whatever the Dow Jones or the S&P 500 is doing, Bitcoin, gold and silver will follow. So there was a bit of a tumble with the indices. Well, guess what? Bitcoin tumbled, Tesla tumbled, everything tumbled. So everything's in lockstep with the S&P 500 at the moment. And again, we are resting on some hell of a trend line here. Now, whether we bounce or not is another question. In fact, whilst we're doing this, I'm going to open up my FXCM. And I've also been calling for a little rally in the dollar. So as we can see, looking at the weekly chart on the dollar, if we just look at this over here. So the dollar's been caterpillaring up this massive support level, and it's busted through. Okay, so this is big news. And long story short, for those who are not familiar with the markets, if the dollar goes up, gold and silver goes down, stocks go down, yada yada yada. When the dollar goes down, everything else goes up. So what this is basically showing us is that whenever you see a breakout like this, a very clear and defined breakout like this, you nearly always have a pullback, as in it pulls back to previous support, now resistance, before buggering off. So what I'm saying here, on the weekly chart, we are due for a big old pullback on the dollar. Now, if or when this happens, now this could either go back to this level here, which is this 12,200 level, or it could actually pull back to actually hit this level. I'm in two minds, but long story short, we're due for some sort of pullback. We had the beginnings of one literally yesterday. If we go back to the daily chart now, last couple of days had a tiny pullback, and that little pullback has caused a pretty big correction. Now here's the thing: if we have dollar strength pulling back, as I mentioned, we're going to see everything tumble. Everything tumble. Indices, Tesla, everything. So yeah, I'm still bearish short term. I'm massively bullish long term for Tesla, cryptos and bullion. Looking at gold and silver, guess what? Down day in stocks. What happened with gold? We had another down day. So yeah. Now regarding gold, this, as I mentioned yesterday, this is what I call the Bitcoin plop. So technically, if we get rid of these things here, when you have this sort of compression, so when you have a falling compression in a rising market, this is actually bullish. So if you apply this with most currencies, yeah, what you'll see is that in the last apex, so when I say the apex, I guess the last sort of 20% of this squeeze, remember this, it's like the market's being funneled down into this little wedge. It's being compressed. And so typically what happens in that apex, you see a breakout to the beginning of that structure. So i.e. whereas the beginning of this structure of this compression is this high here. So what you should see is some sort of breakout over here. Let's get rid of that line. However, when it comes to commodities and especially crypto, this pattern pretty much goes out the window. And like nearly all the time when you see this pattern in Bitcoin, what it does is it gets towards, you know, the end of this compression, and what does it do? It goes, see ya. It then has a bit of a pullback. That bit's normal, and then it continues to do its thing. And this is what I now call the Bitcoin plop. If we look at, sorry, I'm all over the place today, but right, here's the Bitcoin plop back in 2018. Guess what it did? It then plopped. We didn't get the pullback here. However, we then had another Bitcoin plop. Look at this. I'll draw the line so you can actually see it a bit clearer. Bitcoin plop. Mind you, this is a bit of an angled base. I guess you could argue that it's actually this, but long story short, it's the Bitcoin plop. And then we had it, and then we had it a lot with Ether, etc. So going back to gold, what's going to happen? Well, I think if we have a dollar rally, like I mentioned, gold and silver are going to plop with it. So in terms of actionable data, nothing at the moment. I'm still looking at my entry point for Ether. I really want to get in on Ether. Whoopsie. This is really annoying that TradingView doesn't have shortcuts. Every time I press L, I want it to draw a line, but it just brings up a whole list of L stocks. Move away. I have to click this. So yeah, I'm aware of that neckline. Yeah, that's all I got for you today in terms of just crypto and stuff. But remember, everything's following the dollar. Obviously, if you have dollar weakness, or sorry, dollar strength, crypto is going to go down. Oopsie. In fact, one last chart before we go. Ether, Bitcoin. I've got all sorts of doodles here. I drew this a long time ago, but as you can see here, I basically said we're going to have a little march upwards with Ether against Bitcoin, and there's no point getting out of Ether and swapping to Bitcoin until we get at least back to previous highs. And what's happening right now, it's literally following my line. That's interesting. So yeah, we'll see what happens. Chat soon. Toodles. Bye bye. How do I turn this thing off?